Welcome to the Bond. So have you ever heard stories about hunting, but with an eagle? Have you heard stories about using a bird of prey in order to do the hunting for you instead of a bow and arrow? What are they called? Are they hunters or huntresses? And some, I have heard, actually seek out eagles. They go to the nest, they grab the egg when it's still just hatched, and they raise that eagle as their own. So in that process, when you steal a baby chick eagle, you form a bond with it. That bird is used to you as the handler, going ahead and feeding it. It's used to you training it to work with a camel or a horse in order to out in the wild. It's used to you coming into training it and again, building that bond with nature. You see, today we are going to discuss the fascinating world of falconry. It's an incredible ancient art that has been forged by bonding both man and bird for centuries. Like falcons, hawks, owls, even vultures are considered birds of prey. And there are many different types of hawks that are in the California area, like the red-shouldered hawk or the red-tailed hawk or the Merlin hawk. In California, we have falcons, like the American kestrel, owls, like the barn owl or the great horned owl, and of course, the turkey vulture. Although the turkey vulture doesn't hunt live prey, does it? You see, falconry can also be applied to any bird of prey. So falconry, even though it has the word falcon in it, does not specifically mean just only falcons. The art, or the sport, I should say, is training the bird to hunt wild quarry in their natural habitat. So there are many birds of prey. And traditionally, you train either falcons or hawks. Or in California, it's really important to work with peregrines. The bond of working with a bird is generally done through lots of patience, tolerance, and understanding of another species. A signal could be returning it with a call. You could send the bird off and just have a gesture of like your arm is raised, but you're holding some food as an incentive. Falconry is considered ethical. And it's a partnership between the falconer and the bird. It has been around for thousands of years, and it takes dedication and training in order to hone both the human skills as well as the bird skills. It shows a real respect for Mother Nature. That's why over here in California, we have permits and certifications before you can own and or train one of those birds. It's a very regulated industry. Sometimes birds collide with airplanes. Sometimes birds get into the way of our regular, everyday, modern life. But the art of falconry is something that is different because it really gets down to instinct and honing that instinct. In Central Asia, the tradition of eagle hunting is something that has been going around for nomadic tribes. So it's a matter of survival, not recreation. Over here in California, it is a recreation. So let's talk to an expert about falconry and understand that it's not just about hunting. It's about forging a connection, building that bond with nature. It's learning how to appreciate the unique skills and the unique hunting styles of each type of bird of prey. So for example, eagles will soar and then they'll dive. Hawks, well, they're very agile at ambushing. And what they'll do is they'll zoom down like a bullet. Owls are very silent and they go ahead and use sound in order to help hunt. So each one of the birds of prey has a unique style. Getting into something like a bald eagle, that soar and dive means that they can be really high up and spot something from a high altitude and be able to dive and capture it. Even in dense vegetation, they ambush them with a surprise attack. Falcons or a peregrine can be considered very bullet-like. They actually can target a prey and then mid-air, they can actually stun and catch the prey with their talons. Vultures are scavengers. So they don't necessarily hunt the prey, but they're like nature's vacuum cleaner. They go around and clean up all the debris from the leftover hunts. And owls have uncanny hearing and excellent night vision. Their talons are used for grasping. So contrasting with those sensory prowess of the birds, creatures like the mantis shrimp are different. Now, the mantis shrimp, as you probably know, lives underwater. It communicates by changing color. So it's something that uses color and the whole spectrum for ultraviolet to regular everyday colors that we humans see in order to communicate with others. Birds use their sounds and their wings. Here in Southern California, we're fortunate enough to have a very diverse range of wildlife. We have that iconic bald eagle. We also have a very swift peregrine falcon. And we also have the nocturnal great horned owl. These all help us maintain a very healthy ecosystem. Exploring the tradition of birds on the hunt of prey goes back thousands of years. But it's also a way that we can break from our bustling city life in order to maybe volunteer time at an estuary or a place where it understands birds, or something like Adams Falconry. Now, the majestic peregrine falcon and the keen sense that's unrivaled for hunting can absolutely be explained by Gia, who is a member of Adams Falconry. She's a human who even helped move one of her hawks named Fox, ironically, aside while it did its business. That means that the bond was so strong, she could sense without any words that while that bird was perched on her gloved wrist, she knew exactly what to do. You see, unlike modern traditional hunting, the focus of falconry is really on that partnership and that element of respect and leveraging the instinct of both people. Falconry is used to even control pest populations in the wild. You can use them to hunt those foxes that might be plaguing your flock of sheep. Or, as we conclude on this, we might be using falconry for a variety of other reasons. And did you know that there are even contests in order to evaluate the expertise of a falconer? Everything from how they dress to how they interact to how they launch their bird and call it back. So let's go ahead and uncover part 1 of 2 parts with an interview with Adams Falconry and understanding how they can teach the bond that gives us that clarity. Until we bond again. And we are here today with Gia from Adams Falconry, and we are going to learn some amazing things about how to bond with nature through birds of prey. So thank you. That was right on cue. So can you tell me a little bit about him since he's made such a wonderful entrance?
Yeah, so this is Fox. He is a Harris hawk, and he's about 7 years old. Harris hawks are one of the birds of prey that we like to use for our pest control abatement because they are the only birds of prey that hunt in groups in the wild together. So they have kind of like a unique partnership with us, and yeah, they do a great job.
So for rats and things, if I want to get rid of my rodents, I get that guy to hunt it down?
Right. Yeah, so usually they actually are going and deterring seagulls, pigeons, crows, stuff like that. So more bird deterrent.
Got it. Okay. So you have an animal science degree from Cal Poly, is that right?
Yes.
And can you tell me how you got from animal science theoretical into a practical falconry situation?
Yeah, so I started off working with horses mostly, doing equine rehabilitation, and then I moved into wildlife rehabilitation because I love the conservation aspect to it. And from there, I was working with birds of prey a lot, and I decided I loved it. So I looked into falconry, mainly for the educational side of things, and then And then I got into doing this type of falconry, and I love it. I really do. I think it's really interesting to work with these types of birds and have such a special bond with them too.
Now, how is it that you become a falconer? Or do you have to get certified? Do you have to go through some sort of a formal class and a practical class? Do you need to do an apprenticeship at a zoo? I mean, like, how does this all come about?
Yeah, so usually it starts off with a 2-year apprenticeship, and you do have a sponsor during that time. And then you can move on to a general licensing. So you just get a couple more perks with that, different birds, different things you can do with them. And then you hit your master falconry. That's about 7 years worth of doing this. The licensing process as well is a little bit lengthy. A couple different steps that you have to take to get here, but it's all worth it, I think.
And what can you do as a master falconer?
Mainly with the Master Falconry license, you can get different permits, such as like breeding, educational, or the abatement licensing as well. And something special that's really exciting is that you can start getting owls and eagles. So they're just a little bit more unique birds that you can start working with.
So birds of prey have a lot of cultural meaning in different cultures. How do you think that something over in, say, Central Asia compares to how we view birds of prey here in America?
Yeah, so something really cool about falconry is that it's about a 10,000-year-old tradition and sport as well. So it started out in Mongolia, and so the traditions basically stem from that sort of falconry. And then when it was brought over into America, we use it for slightly different reasons, a little less livelihood and a little bit more for sport or for hunting, for fun. And then there's also a few different things that we use now, especially with technology and whatnot. I think you might be getting this.
So how is technology helping build a bond with birds of prey? Is it just putting a GoPro camera on their heads, or is it something else? How are you using technology in order to help develop a bond between a handler and a bird?
Yeah. So I personally really like the old school way of bonding, which is just manning your bird. So you sit with them and walk them around, hunt with them, train them, all that kind of thing. The technology has been really cool because we kind of can get more of a bird's eye view, if you will, especially if you use a GoPro or a drone or something like that. We can learn a lot more about them and what they're doing kind of in the sky rather than just with us. So I think that's a unique way of being able to take a 10,000-year-old traditional sport and kind of wrap in technology with it to kind of help us understand the hunting process and just how they work a little bit better.
So does that mean that you could, as a master falconer, you could lead a hunting party, you could accompany a various hunting party if they wanted to use the bird as part of the hunt?
Yeah, so we can have a couple people out, is what you're saying? Yeah, so a couple people can come out. Usually we'd fly our birds individually unless they're trained to fly together. And then, yeah, we can use things like drones to follow them, or I've seen a couple of people put GoPros on their hoods. And so you can watch the bird fly above you while you're hunting with it, and you can see it look at the prey and look at you, and look at the prey and look at you. So it's really cool. You're literally getting a bird's eye view of what they're seeing versus what you're seeing from the ground. So I think that's pretty unique that we get to do that now.
Can I ask you to explain parts of a hood to me?
Yeah, of course.
So you have this hood here, up there, and could you explain to me a little bit about how it was constructed, why you cover their eyes, and how that goes with the behavioral training aspects of it?
Yeah, absolutely. So, oh, perfect. No worries. I'll keep them up here for a little bit if that's okay. Yeah, so with the hood here, it's made out of leather usually. This is also very traditional style on how to calm a bird down. So it will cover their eyes. Their vision is extremely incredible. So they can see about 2 miles away and into the UV spectrum of light as well. So covering their eyes is kind of like a desensitization process. It's kind of like how we use blinders for a horse. And it's really useful, especially while training. You can kind of manage the bird a little bit better, and it's just safer for them sometimes.
You give them a little feathery pomp and circumstance up there.
Fashion over function. No, I'm kidding. So that's actually, I'll show you how it works here, is that instead of kind of palming the whole thing over their face, we can use just the top knot here. Just slip that over their head real quick, and then we use these to tighten just like that. And this actually isn't his hood, so it might fit a little different. But But just like that, you can kind of cover his eyes. It looks a little silly, but I think the green and the tan look really nice on him.
That is fantastic. And I noticed something else over on your table. Do you mind if I grab it and you tell me what it is?
Oh yes, this thing. This big old clunky metal.
So can you tell me what that is and what it's used for?
Yeah, so our transmitter and receiver, so basically we have a device that goes on the back of their tail, and when these birds are flying, they are free, and so basically this will allow us to find them if they do happen to take a little rendezvous or something that day. And basically it's like a GPS tracker. So say this bird flies, you know, a couple miles away, I can point this thing in the sky and it'll kind of beep and tell me approximately, oh, he's over there somewhere, you know.
That is fantastic.
Yeah, a really cool way to be able to find your bird in case something happens, if they get spooked or something like that.
I'll go ahead and I'll put that back for you. Now, can you tell me why I've noticed this is so heavy and so thick and so reinforced? Can you tell me a little bit about why the construction of a glove is like that? You have this little D-ring on here. I'm sure everything has a function.
Yeah, so everything does have a function. You're very right. So starting from the bottom, just this little tassel here. Oh, thank you. My one hand. This tassel here, that's just for hanging it up, really, make it nice. This D-ring you can see on mine that I have here. It has a couple of clips on it, so I can actually attach his equipment to my glove physically if I don't want him flying. The D-ring is also good for tying your bird to your glove if you need to as well.
So you can tie them down so they don't accidentally fly away.
Just in case, yeah, exactly. So it depends on the type of work that you're doing. And then it is triple thick usually, especially up on the sweet spot, I call it, right where they like to stand, about right here. You can see where his feet are sitting right now. And this is thick because of these talons here. Those will go right through your hand real easily. So yeah, and even with this glove on, you can still feel the pressure and sometimes the sharpness of the talons. There's just enough of a layer there to keep them from going into your skin. So this is vital for falconry, I would say. There are some birds that are gentle enough with their feet, but they are still wild animals, so we definitely want to make sure that they're safe and that we're safe as well.
But now I know that you've not only done with falconry, but you have also had experience with songbirds and aquatic birds and all that. So how is it that your bond is different when you're building up a relationship between a bird of prey versus any other type of bird?
Yeah, so I've doing the wildlife rehabilitation, I've worked with a lot of birds, and in very different ways. Of course, that's more medical versus training them every day. But birds of prey just have something really unique about them, and especially Harris hawks, since they do hunt in a group together, they tend to have more of that partnership orientation a little bit more. But other birds, there's just something about them where, like, you can have them work with you, you know, in certain situations, but it's just very different. It's hard to describe, I feel like. I think it's because they're so wild and there's so much fire and passion with these birds that you're kind of intimidated by them a little bit, and it makes you respect them even more. And so I think that mutual trust and mutual respect that you have with this bird of prey is really what gets you the bond that you want to work with them. While other birds, they're more prey animals, so they're not really looking for something to help them be more successful. They're just looking to do bird stuff, I like to say.
But do you feel that you as a falconer have a better bond or a tighter bond with a bird of prey than you would with a duck?
Depends what kind of duck. I would say yes, probably. Of course, I'm a little biased because I do work with them all day. But out of all the birds at the Wildlife Rehab Center, birds of prey are the ones I wanted to work with the best, or the most, excuse me. So, but why exactly? And I love the danger behind it. I love
a little bit like taming this incredible power.
Correct, like taming the wild, if you will. I just think they're magnificent animals, honestly, and while I appreciate all kinds of birds, I think that the fact that we can have such a special bond and relationship with them is really, really cool. And And we can use them not only for hunting and creating a partnership, but also for more sustainable functions. So instead of using traps and poison for pest birds, we can use birds of prey instead. So nature.
So it's better for the ecology to use birds of prey to keep the ecology balanced as opposed to pesticides and poison.
Yeah, personally, I've seen the work that these guys can do, and it's pretty incredible to see a job site go, landfill with a couple thousand seagulls at it, and a couple months we're there, and there's only a few hundred now. And instead of using anything to rid of these birds, it's really just a natural deterrent that we use, and it's nature. So
do you mind if I ask you if you've ever been in any sort of competitions
with birds of prey? I have not actually. I used to compete with horses a lot.
Okay. Can you partner a horse with a bird of prey when you're going hunting?
Yes, and that is definitely in the 5-year plan. I would love to hunt on a horseback. I think that would be combining like my 2 favorite passions, and that would just be so incredible. So yeah, I've already thought.
A Mongolian horse, or more of an Arabian, or a Frisian?
Any horse is good for me. I like a classic Mustang, nice and fast.
Okay. I think we have some of those in Norco and Corona.
Yeah, absolutely. But I know especially in Mongolia, they hunt with their eagles on horseback a lot. Cover more distance, obviously, and they do hunt with for livelihood. So it's very necessary out there.
Do you need to do any different training for a bird to get used to that trotting?
Yeah, I would assume so. Yeah, I haven't combined them myself, but I would assume there is definitely a lot of acclimation that needs to happen between your bird and your horse, especially if bird is flying, horse might get spooked, and vice versa. So these are 2 very spooky animals, I like to say. They're both very wild at heart. You can tame them, but even with horses, I know they're domesticated, I still feel like they're pretty wild. They have that fight or flight aspect to them. So the combination of all that just sounds like a lot of fun to me, honestly.
So now tell me, what other types of things can you train a bird of prey to do? I mean, can you call him and summon him?
Yeah, basically. So part of the training, like I said, was manning him. So basically keeping him on the fist as much as you can, get him used to your body language, everything like that. And then part of that training is also having them start to fly to you. So especially with hawks and what we do with these guys, a lot of the time what we like to do is have them fly and chase a bird, deter it, and then we can whistle and they'll come right back, or whatever you want to do to get them back. So I like to bridge my terms and use a whistle and raising my glove up. So then if they either see the glove rise or hear the whistle and they can't see me, let's say, then they'll know it's time to come back. So we do like to use positive reinforcement for that, of course, and it's pretty much all positive reinforcement with these guys.
Now, earlier you mentioned that the visual spectrum of a bird of prey actually is beyond human spectrum. Is that correct, that they can also see?
Yeah. So they can see up to 2 miles away, give or take, depending on the animal and visibility, I guess. And they can also see into the UV spectrum of light. So a lot of the time, I like to give the example of a crow. A crow is pretty dark, nice and black for us. To another crow, they might look iridescent. So kind of more shades of purple and green in there a little bit with the feathers. And I think that's pretty incredible that they're able to pick up on such a different spectrum of light. And the coolest part about that is that, especially these guys in the desert, they'll use the UV refraction from the light on the urine trails of rats. And so they'll actually be able to hunt rats based on their urine trails because of that UV light.
They can actually see the reflection of a rat's urine from way up high.
Yeah,
and
like when you use a black light to see urine, it'll kind of show up in a different light that way, like something brighter, whatever they see. But basically, they're able to hunt with that UV spectrum of light, which I think is really unique.
That is amazing. So what do you do when they lose a feather? Do you ever save them and repurpose that feather for like a quill pen or something? Or
I have a bouquet of feathers in my home, and I use them for decoration. So what we do with their feathers actually is it's called molting. So every year they'll molt their feathers, usually just ones that are maybe a little older or broken. They don't do a full molt every year. Say they do break a feather mid-hunt or something, we can take one of their previous year feathers, the same one from their wing or something, and it's called imping. So
imping,
I-M-P-I-G. And so basically you can implant that feather back into the shaft because they're hollow. Yeah, so basically if he breaks a feather, you you just find his old one from last year, the same one, cut it down to a certain length, whatever you need, and there's a few techniques you can use to pop it right back in, and it's pretty cool that we're able to kind of repurpose their feathers that way.
Yeah, to help them.
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of the time we'll use that for rehabilitation.
They don't end up in a duster.
Exactly, yeah. So, and they might, I don't know. But yeah, so with rehabilitation, especially say a bird got, crashed into something pretty hard, broke all of his tail feathers. Big bummer, especially for a hunter. Well, now we can take a red tail's feathers from last year, put all of them back in, and release them back into the wild. So,
and they stay in?
Yeah, they usually do, if you do it well enough, I guess. And then that gives that bird a better chance at survival as well. So not only with their hunting birds is it efficient to continue hunting, but also for rehab birds to get them back out in the wild again.
Learning about birds of prey and how much they can help humans has been so fascinating to me. I didn't realize that in some cultures, when you take the baby eagle chick from its nest and raise it, you only keep it for 7 years before you release it back into the wild. And then you serve it one last huge final meal in order to help that bird make the transition from being in captivity with man to being in the wild and possibly making their own nest for future eaglers. So one of the things that I would love to do is talk to Gia again from Adams Falconry. She was really interesting in understanding that when you have a bird which naturally flies away and you pair it with a horse, which naturally is an animal of flight, how do you train those two to get together and actually work like a cohesive team? And how do you get a human to really understand a bird who has no real speech? Because they're wild animals and they need to remain wild. This ecological way of actually hunting has been really effective and has been beneficial on a number of cases. It's therapeutic for the falconer, it's good for the ecology, and it's a way to bond with nature. So maybe what you would like to do is find an estuary near you or a bird preserve like a national park and volunteer. Either way, you'll find that tool that will ping you out of the city and into nature. And until next time, until we bond again.